Good evening and welcome back to KTN Prime. Now tonight, we tackle an issue that is no longer a luxury, but a fundamental human right. Data privacy in the digital age. Every click, every tap, every transaction leaves a digital footprint that shapes our lives, from the loans we qualify for to the content we interact with while online. Now, in a world defined by big data, our personal information has become the new oil. And the question is, are we, the citizens, the sovereign owners of this oil? Or are we simply wells being exploited? Now, Kenya has taken a crucial step with the Data Protection Act 2019, establishing a legal shield for digital lives. But as technology, particularly artificial intelligence, accelerates, does this shield have cracks? Is the law being enforced effectively? What is the practical responsibility of every single Kenyan in this digital ecosystem? Remember, trust is the new currency in this digital age. So how can we build trust? Joining us to dissect the law, the technology, and your rights is Dr. Gameli, a leading cybersecurity expert and the CEO of CyberGuard Africa and the founder of Africa Hackon, as well as Dr. Laibuta Mugambi, a distinguished legal professional and the chairperson of the Data Privacy and Governance Society of Kenya. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this timely conversation. Really a pleasure to have you with us. Karibuni sana.
Asante.
Okay, I don't know where to start, but perhaps let's start with breaking down these jargons. And I'll start with you, Dr. Gameli.
Yes.
Because it's proper to demystify data privacy. For the average Kenyan who's watching tonight, how would you clearly distinguish between data privacy and data security? Which one's about the who and which one's about the how?
So, we have a lot of conversation when it comes to privacy, and everybody, what belongs to you is what people want to say is private. But when you get to look at the fact that we give out all of this information, it's not private anymore. So what's your full name?
Jesse.
How old are you?
Rogers.
Jesse Rogers.
30 thereabouts.
Okay, 30 thereabouts. You say he doesn't want to give that information. So there's data that we hold, and everything, all the devices that we have, our phones, our mobile, our TVs and the likes, are getting data from us, and they're sharing with other people. There are people who buy that data. We call them data brokers. And data brokers basically want to be able to actually use that for intelligence. They want to use that for advertisement. They want to be able to target that if they want to send a message to you within Nairobi or between 30 and 35-year-olds, they can send that to you. That's how they make money, right? And so I say privacy is almost dead, if I should say that, because we give out this information almost everywhere we go. The guards that we meet at the entrance of places, we write our full names, write our full details, and I actually asked the question some time back, where is this data going?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And we get to, so I said data security is basically now, how do I secure that data that is mine? How do I make sure that when I search Jesse Rogers, I can't find all that information that easily, right? Because I only have 2 details, but there are tools that are there being able to integrate and be able to make sure that you remove as much information from the internet to be safe. So that's data security part of things. But the privacy part of it is neither here nor there.
Okay, and that's a little bit worrying. And I guess that's why there's policies in place to secure this data.
Yes.
And Dr. Mugambi, as you come in, what are the key legal rights Kenyans have under the Data Protection Act?
Actually, just to mention, to add to what Bright has said, actually the law is to make it a bit harder. But it's not possible because technology evolves from day to day.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example. So people say that when there was Cambridge Analytica, we saw Cambridge Analytica being this great technology that could carry out direct targeted marketing during an electoral process. But now we have AI, and it makes Cambridge Analytica look like child's play. The challenge is that the law does not develop fast enough to catch up with technology. Because now people are living talking about AI, and the conversation now is about quantum computing.
Yeah.
So AI is becoming an obsolete conversation. But that said, so Kenya developed, so of course we had the Data Protection Act that was enacted in November 2019. But even before then, our constitution that was promulgated in August 2010, Article 31 provides for the right to privacy. So Article 31 says you and I have a right, for example, not for personal space not to be invaded, like our home, our person, that there needs to be reason why information about us and our families, our personal information should be collected, processed, or handled. Then now come in, but also remember the journey of the Data Protection Act was not organic, because the Data Protection Act started being discussed in Parliament as far back as 1998. So 1998, 2000, wow. So if you go to parliamentary records, you'll find that Dr. Shemo Chodho had actually said, because of the Millennium Bug, Kenya needs to think about data protection and privacy, because the argument was that with the new technology, I think the Yahoo, that time of Yahoo, AOL, and that kind, Netscape, yes. That they are taking data about Kenya. So they say, let's come up with a Data Protection Act. So Parliament mandated the Attorney General then to come up with the Data Protection Act. But that never happened. Then the conversation started now around 2009, 2010. Civil society came up with a Data Protection Act, a Data Protection Bill. When we actually the bill was proposed before the Constitution was promulgated, but sort of that conversation disappeared. Then that conversation now resurrected when we were talking about Huduma number. Remember when government was like, now we really need Huduma number. Yeah. And so there was a challenge on Huduma number. And the challenge by civil society, like the Nubian Human Rights Organization, said, you cannot implement Huduma number without a very clear data protection law. And at that time, we had two bills. We had a bill at the Senate and we had a bill at the National Assembly. One was being pushed by Senator Gideon Moi, as he then was at that point, and another one by the Leader of Majority was Honorable Adan Duale. Yeah. Through so the Ministry of ICT was saying, because we need this Huduma number, let us pass this law. So when you look at the history of our Data Protection Act, it was passed based purely because government was like, if we pass the Data Protection Act, then we can have our Huduma number. So, of course, the Data Protection Act was passed not as we would have envisioned, because we made a lot of submissions to Parliament that the bill needed a lot of improvement. But that said, when it was enacted, it provides for certain rights. That, for example, you and I have a right to be informed what our data, personal information, is going to be used for. Okay. You and I have a right to say, for example, don't handle my data. You have a right to get your data corrected. For example, if you're filling out a form or an application and they say you're male instead of female, or they write your birth of date wrong, you have a right to say, please correct this. Then you also have a right to deletion of your data, but depending on under the circumstances. For example, you can't go and say delete my passport number or delete my birth certificate.
It's my right.
So it is, yeah, so it is within certain confines. Okay. Then also you and I have a right to complain to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So one of the things that this law provided is that it created an institution. So mostly before the Data Protection Act, if you had a complaint or you had an issue relating to privacy, you'll go to the High Court. But even before the law, the High Court made a lot of decisions that were in favor of the right to privacy. For example, we even had, when you look at the Children's Law, it had the right to privacy for children. When you look at the HIV, AIDS and Prevention Act, it had the confidentiality of data. You look at the Advocates Act, it has a right relating to advocate-client confidentiality. You look at health laws, there is patient medical professional. So it's not something new that the Data Protection Act was bringing, but the Data Protection Act was trying to provide a mechanism within which you and I can at least have some control of our data.
What we have here. Yeah.
Okay, and still on matters legal right, Dr. Mugambi, the concept of lawful consent is central to this DPA, the Data Protection Act. So what constitutes valid, informed consent in the digital era? For example, when you enter a site and you simply click, I agree. So does this waive your rights?
My question, why did you click? Why did you click? Okay, I also clicked I agree when I joined this social media platform.
Yeah.
Actually, university students actually have a project called Jua Terms. That is being sponsored by Amnesty International, and it's asking young people, when you click agree, what really are you clicking? But research has also shown that to read some of these terms and conditions, you need like 4 hours.
Yeah, really lengthy.
We don't read them.
We really don't.
So we don't read. So what is this prior, pre, and informed consent? Of course, now we need to be told why is the data, who is collecting the data first. So say, for example, KTN or Standard Media is collecting my data, then tell me for what reason, because that's what the Data Protection Act provides. Tell someone, we need your data for this reason. For example, when you came here in the studio, you tell us, by the way, for you to get into the premises, we need to identify you. So that's a reason. But sometimes you find that in some places you might sign, then the data is used for something else like advertising, or what Dr. Bright said, that data brokers come and buy it. That's why we find ourselves, for example, we are registered to political parties we have no idea about.
Receiving betting
betting messages and all that. So also the free, prior, and informed consent, the information that you should get is how long will this data be kept? How will this data be kept safe? But we've seen, and I think Dr. Bright will talk about it, we have had a lot of data breaches in Kenya. We've also seen surveillance whereby, especially during the protest times, you find that somebody says, they found me in my flat. So the question begins,
how did they know?
How did they know? Where did they find me? And they actually get you to the door where you actually live. So this brings up the question is that when we leave our data out here, as Bright said, do we know what we are consenting to? But sometimes you may consent, you may provide free, prior, and informed consent, but the data brokers or some criminal elements just come and pick that data and use it for whatever reason.
So just jumping onto that, I decided to search Laibuta. So that's right now.
Right now, yeah.
See how much information I got of him in less than 10 seconds.
Just don't read it on air.
So basically, I'm able to know his full name. I'm able to know what he has, his PhD, all his social media accounts, details, just because of, I didn't even know of his first name, which I'm not going to say. But that's how much data we have out there when it comes to being, when data brokers are able to find information. Your email, you know, that has almost every detail about you, because you use the same email to subscribe to so many things. If I have your email, I can tell possibly the last Airbnb you have been to, accounts that you've signed up for, places that you've actually left that data, and you consent to actually give them that information, saying, use that information to actually do anything they can do with it. And people keep on buying them, right? And there are platforms that actually integrate to be able to get them. These days, I don't even need a platform to be able to do that. Do you know there's a Telegram group? When you actually put your email, it tells me everything about you. And passwords that have leaked somewhere. There's a Telegram group for that. And there's a bot. And no one is paying for it. We're not even paying for that. That's how much of our data is out there.
So I guess the next question would be, what sort of data is sensitive? What is being sought after by some of these identity thieves, and why?
Oh, yeah. Cyber criminals look for information that they can use to be able to get over your life, right? The first thing they look for is email. Why? Because your bank account is linked to your email. Your social media is linked to your email. People forget their Facebook accounts, which is linked to the email. Almost your entire digital lifestyle is linked to an email. So that email is what they look for. But how do they get to the email? Email has very good security. You have two-step verification. You have backup codes, which nobody even knows about, and all of those kind of things. But they'll need your phone number to be able to actually convince you to change it, or they'll get your phone number. So these are sensitive things. They need your full details. And these days, with AI tools, do you know you're actually able to clone people's IDs? So if you take your ID, somebody can actually take a picture of that, use an AI tool to clone it, to verify somewhere else. If the system is not smart enough, it will actually think that is your real ID for them to be able to reset. Once I'm able to reset your password, I'm able to actually do things as you. I'm able to drain your account. I'm able to actually verify on certain platforms. So email, full names, your home location, those are very private information, and a phone number. Those are the most sensitive information that we have out there.
Okay, now that we know about the risks, let's talk about the safeguards.
Yes.
So what technical safeguards must organizations prioritize to prevent such cases of data theft?
Lots of organizations try to launch applications and collect information without thinking about security at the beginning. They think about security as an afterthought. They think about security when the product is launched. You know, we have something called a security triangle, and it's usability, functionality, and security. Security is supposed to be in the middle part of things, to have the ball balance, that let it be very useful to somebody. The usability should be simple. The functionalities should also be there, but have security as a base of everything. So they need to make sure they do security assessment. We call that pen testing. They need to do a security audit of the system. They need to start building security from ground up. That when we are designing the architecture of, say, for example, how are we collecting that information? How are we storing that information? So that when I store, and Mugambi is part of my team, he doesn't go behind my back and be able to search information about you just because you gave me that information.
Yeah.
That needs to be done from the design perspective. That means you need to have policies in place. Most organizations don't have policies. They don't have design concepts. They don't have security architectures. Some don't even have a security personnel. So by the time they finish everything, they launch an application, everybody's like, yeah, nice application, it's working. It's able to collect data about me, about what I do, my height, everything, my weight, my medical details. The next thing you know, it's actually being accessed by somebody else. So hackers will forever try to go for that. So organizations need to have those bases and get to counter security organizations or firms to be able to help them assess some of those risks before they actually go out.
And out of curiosity, how does the use of personal information on social media make Kenyans more susceptible to fraud?
So fraudsters, even today, they called me. They called me saying, I'm from ABCD Bank. Do you have an account with us? We would like to reset. And I told that guy, I'm your wrong target. Don't do it on me.
Nah.
He kept on going on. Yeah. And I'm like, really? Now they're even using ladies for that. It's a whole crew. Social media is the one-stop shop that gives a lot of information about us. If we're forever putting details about our birth dates, happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday, there's a tool that can actually tell how old you are based on the number of times you've said happy birthday. It calculates that. We've been putting details about location. We've been putting details about pictures. If I have a picture of you, there's a website that I can do a reverse image search of your picture to find out exactly where have you been mentioned, all over the internet. So social media has become an avenue for fraudsters to be able to use that. And with now AI tools, they can even mimic your face. So there's one common one which I've seen on Instagram where you see a video of your friend saying, guys, guess what? I won X amount of cryptocurrency. You should also do this. Click on this link. You know what? They've used an AI tool to actually mimic him or her talking and say something where you actually click on the link. So you also become a target. But if you're not careful, you can't tell the difference between that video and who the real person is. Yeah. And that happened to a friend of mine. I was with him, and I'm like, wait, how are you talking about cryptocurrency? You're next to me. You did not post this. He says, look, I was hacked. So fraudsters are advancing. The more they advance, now there are better tools to do that. We need to be secure as well.
Okay, Dr. Mugambi, let's talk matters safety and compliance for businesses, because a lot is said about the cost of compliance. Let's now talk about the cost of non-compliance, because it's not just in fines, but in terms of that eroded consumer trust and the reputational damage to some of these companies.
Okay, let's start with the cost of compliance.
Okay.
So a lot of organizations or businesses that we have conversations with, generally, they say there's a problem with cash flow. So even if they are going to purchase those tools or hire the cybersecurity experts or the system security experts, they don't have the cash flow to do that. So what you find is that especially SMEs, what they do, they just get tech online, free technology, free apps, free ERPs that they'll just download
when
online.
It's free, you're the product.
Yeah. But it's free. You see,
free,
at the end of the day, somebody will make this. So if I need to buy, let's say, a payment software, and there's one that I can download online at no cost, and the one that I need to pay for, I need to pay 250,000 or 300,000.
Yeah.
And they have cash flow problems, or this is a startup. Where will they go? Easily.
For the free one.
So there's that issue. You also have to look at the economy, and sometimes, especially startups, SMEs that generally have cash flow problems.
Yeah.
But then the cost of non-compliance is what Dr. Bright is talking about. Then you're easily hacked. So you'll find that somebody will get into your system and they'll have a database of all your customers. All the details about your payment systems, your bank accounts. Secondly, it will erode the confidence of with your clients or with your customers, because what will happen is that your customers will start finding information out there, and sometimes when the criminals they call you, you can guess where they got this because there's something how they talk, and you can guess. Okay, I think I have an idea where they got this data from.
Yeah.
So the cost could be that you could lose, like, I mean, you find people, especially mobile money criminals or fraudsters, you find that a small business that the turnover is not too much, they lose all their days collections for that day.
Yeah.
And that becomes an issue. Then it also becomes another challenge is the issue of corporate espionage, whereby you're developing a product or you have strategies and somebody and this goes in different ways. Sometimes it's usually an insider.
Yep.
So a disgruntled employee was like, okay, these guys are not treating me well, so let me just download all the strategies and take it to the competition. Or sometimes it's just somebody who feeds straight to the systems and gets your strategy, so that if you had a product that you wanted to launch, let's say on Friday, you find that your competitor has launched something that is similar to yours on Thursday. So generally, those are the challenges. And another challenge will be that you're not very sure about the accuracy of the data. Because sometimes it's not just about stealing. People now feed in. Yeah. They poison your data.
Data poisoning.
Yeah, so what we call data poisoning. People come and put the wrong data. So if you're doing analysis, etc., then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Then there's also another challenge that we've seen. And I mean, when I talked about like surveillance that was being carried out, especially in the last 2 years after demonstrations, then you find that people actually lose their lives when their data is mishandled. So you find somebody is trailed to a certain location, is either abducted or is killed. You find that data points that are found out there, we've seen about gender-based violence, where somebody in a relationship, that relationship breaks down, and one of the persons in that relationship actually gets some data about the other person, where they live. Somebody might even have moved to a different location, changed numbers, but because of this weak data security system, this person is found, this person is killed, or this person is harmed, or this person is maimed. So sometimes what I talk about is that the negative effects of not handling data the right way actually affects human beings. You know, sometimes we talk about data like an abstract thing, but actually humans lose lives, humans get maimed, humans lose property, humans lose money because of wrong handling of data.
Yeah.
Well, it's quite consequential. In terms of legal redress, in case of a scenario where data breach leads to identity theft, what's the data subject's legal recourse against a company that perhaps failed to secure their data, and how challenging is it to get that incorrect data corrected or permanently deleted?
Well, there are many avenues. Of course, one is you can go to DCI. So there's a cyber security unit within DCI that can take up the issue. Also, anti-banking fraud, under DCI, there's anti-banking fraud. So if the fraud relates to banking transaction, that can also be followed up. But of course, it takes some process before you report, before the evidence is extracted, before...
The process of forensic is long.
So, and I think you can talk more about the forensic when you talk about chain of custody of the data, extraction of the data, certification of the data, and that kind of thing. So, of course, you can report to the relevant authorities. Mostly, it's usually DCI. Okay. Sometimes you can, another option is that you make a complaint to the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So if you look at the Data Protection Act, if somebody has mishandled your data or you've suffered harm because of how your data has been handled, for example, if you found your name, for example, or your data in a data breach, you can complain to the data commissioner. If you are getting SMSs or texts from these fraudsters, like bet here or subscribe to this, you can actually complain. And the good thing is that the data commissioner has made a lot of determinations that are against people who mishandle data, and compensation awarded to the complainants. You can also go to court to complain that your right to privacy has been infringed, but mostly if it relates to personal data, the High Court will take you back and tell you, please let the data commissioner handle the dispute first, or your complaint. Then once the data commissioner has handled your complaint, you go to the High Court. And the interesting thing, which is quite revealing, is that I think only 1 or 2 determinations of the data commissioner have been overturned by the High Court, which just shows that there's some investigation, there's some work that actually goes to the investigations and making the determination. But also, unfortunately, there are some Kenyans who just, they leave their hands and say, it's all right, right. They leave it to God or the deity.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Okay. You can add something on the forensic. Yeah.
So the forensic part of things, there's the collection part of things, the processing, the examination, the documentation part of a forensic investigation, and then even how you present it can be the determining factor to see if your data has been misused or not. Because currently, even a WhatsApp conversation between the two of us, I can fake one right now. A text message, an Instagram conversation between the two of us can be faked. There are websites for that. So a picture evidence to actually take to court of law has to follow the right procedure for forensic investigation, saying, was this really this conversation between Rogers and I, or Dr. Mugambi was the who faked it and sent? So I encourage people to actually take video, screen recording of the conversation if you're going to actually say you're going to use in the court of law. Because pictures these days is very difficult. There are tools to be able to determine the metadata of the file or the details of the video, picture, document, where it was actually created, where it was actually, who actually created it and everything, and compare and be able to actually present a court of law. The difficulty comes now if you don't have people like Dr. Laibuta who understands, then it becomes very difficult for even the lawyer or the judge or the magistrate to be able to present that. There has been a lot of, knowledge transfer to a lot of legal entities about that, and we have professionals in the legal space who can actually present that very well. So there is some work on that side, but we need to follow that process, and it takes a long time for them to get to do that.
And simply we are saying there's recourse, and there are avenues available, and those avenues to a certain percentage, they are effective, but sometimes you might get disappointed, which, I mean, it's just part of the process, but in a certain percentage of the time, they do work. There are processes that work.
It might be a lengthy process, but it does work.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Gameli, mobile loan apps have been at the center of data sharing controversies, and we've seen it on mainstream news, with many users complaining of either harassment or their contact details being shared. What technical measures should be put in place for, data controllers in the fintech space, specifically regarding the separation of user data from contact data to prevent this non-compliant debt shaming tactics?
First of all, Eben, there has to be, we have something we call data minimization. So minimization is basically saying we don't collect all that information about you. I don't need your full phone number to be able to actually, process details of what you're giving me. There has to be there has to be laws around that as to how the fintechs are basically using your data when you're signing up. I don't have to put your name on the app to be able to actually get you to be called if I don't pay my debt, right? But there has to be a process, there has to be a legal entity to it to say that I'm the one who's taking the loan. I don't have to put beneficiaries on it, and then even the beneficiaries have to consent to saying that I'm the one Bright is taking the loan, but Dr. Mugambi, if in case they don't find me, they'll come for you.
And he has to be okay with it.
He has to be okay with it.
Okay.
But they don't follow that process. Yeah. So there's a legal entity around that. However, they also need to make sure that they protect the data of those applications. I came across one of the loan companies who left an entire database of what they've collected from users on a public repository. Let me show you what they collected. They were collecting the entire SMS, the entire call logs, your SMS logs. And I'm like, why would they collect all that information to study how you talk to people? That's breach of data privacy. That's complete breach. And just that an internal software developer left it on a public repository. If my data if I was part of that company, I would have sued them.
Actually, so you find that there have been, at the beginning when the Office of the Data Commissioner was established, I think more than 60% of the complaints were from these digital lenders.
Okay.
But then Central Bank took some action in terms of registration of these digital lenders, and one of the conditions was that you need to comply with the provisions of the Data Protection Act. Yeah. So what the Data Commissioner did is that apart from making a lot of determinations and penalties against digital lenders, they also provided guidelines for the digital financial sector to say that if you're collecting data within this sector, this is what you need to do. The Digital Financial Services Association itself also took rein on its members, whereby it created policy, the trainings, it provided the technical guidance, and you'll find for the registered digital lenders, there has been a lot of great progress. But then you find that 90% of the digital lenders are under the association, but then there's a 10% of what we call rogue. So the rogue ones. So the rogue ones are the ones that you find that are doing whatever. So they create an app. The app has access to your microphone, access to your camera, for example, access to your emails. I mean, I was reading something today on X, and one of these loan companies, they actually shut down a car on the highway because this person had not paid their loan, which means...
They did it remotely.
Yeah, remotely. Oh. So you can imagine you're on the super highway and your car is you're servicing it using one of these loans. Yeah. It has a tracking system and it has remote. So they actually stopped the car at the middle of the highway. So you can imagine if you're zooming past and now there's a matter in court, which means imagine the kind of data they have about this person. They know their movement. Yes. So they know when this person gets up in the morning, they go to point A, they go to point B.
Which is very risky.
At this time, they're on the highway, then let's switch it off. So this actually has become a big issue, and you find that the central bank, in collaboration with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner and the Association of the Digital Financial Services, is really trying to rein. But as I say, they are raining on their members who are 90%, but there's this 10% of rogue ones who are just out there. It's a wild, wild west for them.
Well, it's scary. Okay, let's talk matters artificial intelligence, because AI sort of relies on massive data collection, and at times it can lead to algorithmic bias in terms of, in case a loan application, in case of hiring, when it comes to job opportunities. Now, from a cybersecurity perspective, I'd like to know, how does one even begin to audit an opaque AI system for fairness, or how should I put it, data integrity?
I think we're still in the early stages of understanding where AI is going to go. It's moving really fast, really fast, but we are still at the rudimentary stages. So being able to even fully audit any system that is using AI is going to take some time. Okay. However, we can actually see, we can see the basis of what is working with and what is it collecting and what is it processing. And you can also study the traffic to know where is it sending the data to, right? So there are those guidelines that are there, which has been developed by a lot of people to say, if this AI system is collecting my data, I want to figure out where is it sending the data to, right? Most people don't check that. They just want to enjoy the beauty of AI tools, which is really nice, but I think it comes with its risks as well. So I feel like we are still in the early stages. I'm a bit scared as to what it's able to do, because some of the things I'm able to do with AI tools is quite interesting and scary at the same time. So we need to be very careful as to what system do we give our data to? How are we letting these AI systems process our data? Because just the same way we have been giving data to a lot of other systems in the past, see what it's doing right now. That one tool, if I put your phone number, is able to actually spread out details about myself. Everything. Now, with AI, which is able to process faster, what is going to come about?
Okay. Add something?
Well, you know, the thing is that every day, so if you go to people launching something, they say it's AI-enabled. I think also you need to say our news at KTN is AI-powered to just add some gravity. But I think, like Bright is saying, one of the challenges is that there are not really policies or guidelines about this. Develop your system, let people use it. For example, if you're downloading, let's look at some of the tools that people download, the GPTs, etc. You just download and start using it. And if you're paying, you start using it. And of course, it's collecting your data. So that I said, the problem is that policy does not move with technology. But also there's the question, do you really need policy for each and every piece of technology that comes up? But what I usually say is that perhaps we need to create some basic principles, like what you're talking about, issues of fairness, issues of transparency, issues of accountability. Who is accountable? For example, if the government is saying that they are developing an AI system, for example, for placement of people at the university or a secondary school, and it's an AI tool, or for example, for the social health insurance, for example, the question is, what is the issue? How do you determine accuracy? How do you determine security? How do you determine accountability? How does this system affect the fundamental rights and freedoms of people? Because if you use the AI tool with the wrong algorithm, I think you remember there's a case whereby a student who did their exams was placed in a girls' high school instead of a boys' high school. So those are the challenges of having this algorithm. Or for example, you can go to hospital and get the wrong diagnosis because maybe the person providing the medical intervention has used an AI tool that has completely misdiagnosed. I'll give an example. Remember during COVID, they were saying, like, for example, what we were using to the oxygen, to look at the oxygen level, and they were saying some of these tools, for example, if you have dark skin like myself, it was not accurate. So it is not as accurate as if you have a lighter skin tone. So it just shows that some of this technology, we really have to think deeper, and it calls for regulation, but regulation that also allows for innovation. And AI, for example, so let's look at it, for example, if you look at what we call surveillance. There's surveillance carried out by private sector, for example, for advertising. People want to see, for example, what are you buying, what are you purchasing, what services and goods do you purchase, so that they can tailor some messaging to you. But there's also these tools that are used, for example, I mean, we've heard of things like Pegasus, for example, that has been in the news. So these tools can also be used for it can be used for good investigations, where you can carry out investigation with open source intelligence and get to find out and collect data that can be used in court to charge somebody and convict them for a crime. But sometimes it's also used against politicians, against activists, against demonstrators. And then the question arises, where is this data coming from? And as Bright is saying, this data can be collected from different sources. All right?
At a faster rate.
At a faster rate, it can be collected from public sector platforms. Remember when you look at, for example, the public sector platforms you engage in, starting from your birth certificate, starting to your driver's license and all that. Then there's private sector, hospitals, schools, utility companies, whether it's electricity, whether it's water, telcos. When you sign a book out there, how do you know where that data goes to? So there are a lot of data points, and when you use this technology, then it becomes very easy, for example, to do the right thing and also to do the wrong thing, like I said, to track people. And when you track people for the wrong reason, it affects their lives. And sometimes you can't tell where the source of that information is. Because if you go, for example, and Dr. Bright will tell you, if you go to the dark web, you'll get data dumps of Kenyans' data from public sector, from private sector, from non-profit sector. And all somebody just needs is these tools. Go search, just say, Bright, and we'll know exactly where you are. I mean, I attended a forum where Bright could tell us which floor of the building we are in.
I mean, these days, you don't even have to go to the dark web for that. No. Like I said, Telegram is so powerful, you have no idea. So there's a Telegram group again. If you put details such as what you're looking for, you'll find it. Details about you. So it's becoming quite easy for people to be able to do that. And AI tools, there's a flip side of it, where as much as it's doing analysis very nice and easy and much better, there is, the way you have ChatGPT and the like, we have HackerGPT. There's a HackerGPT version. There's others I don't want to mention on air, whereby if I want to write a malware, the way to take me more than an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 on a full day can now be written in less than 10 seconds. And it's actually free. You don't have to pay for that tool. So there are those. It's also helping, but also, again, the AI is helping to be able to do analysis faster. So when you're having threat detection in organizations, there are tools AI tools can be able to detect that faster and say, this attack is actually real. Let's see how many other computers in the organization can detect has been infected the same way, and let's automatically isolate the computer that has been infected, right? So there are some really good threat detection intelligence on the good side of things, but the hackers are also using that to faster do analysis. Like the other day, we had an AI tool that we wrote with my team. We were able to actually scan a particular radius of Kenya, said, scan this radius, find all the CCTVs that are vulnerable, and let's log in. And most of them were TVs. And when we log in, you're able to change the channel of what they're watching. My. And this is right here in Kenya. It was a simple tool. We just told the AI to be able to write for us, which would have taken us days to do that.
And I think it doubles down on the importance of having such conversations because
Yeah.
the risk is there. So how do you protect yourself? And it begs the next question right now, Bright, because beyond using strong passwords,
Yes.
beyond changing passwords, you don't have the same password on this account and this account or in this social media and this social media. What's the single most effective behavioral change and the most critical tool that perhaps Kenyans should adopt to protect their data from phishing, or is it scams,
Yeah.
data leaks, you name it?
We first of all need to stop sharing too much information. You know, you take a taxi.
But how will people know I'm on holiday?
Yeah. I do that personally sometimes as well.
I need to show you guys I'm on holiday at the coast, so I need to post.
Well, that is there. I mean,
And
there's
you
some
put the
people-
location there.
There's some people
Exactly.
who watch, there's not a location feature on things like Instagram.
Yeah.
So if you zoom in on Instagram, there's a feature there. You can see who's nearest to you, which is nice. But again, it can be a negative aspect to it. Snapchat used to have that. I think it still does. And there was a public version. So if you search Snapchat maps, you can actually see what the people have posted. So when I say too much information, I mean details about where exactly you live, addresses, details, because there's an AI tool right now. If you actually take a picture of this room, if you select the corner of this, it can tell you where the picture was taken. And it's there. I don't want to mention the name on air, but it's there.
Yeah.
We need to we need to know what can be used against us that we don't share. So if you take a taxi with all the various taxi apps and you're sharing your number with the person, you are basically giving a lot of your data to that person. You go to some delivery services, you are doing delivery services, you give the number to them. Some even ask, what's your house number? Then you directly give them exactly. So usually I like to give a little bit closer. If you call me when you're getting close. Some of them are inevitable. However, let's go back to the basics of what security is. Your email, again I said, secure your email. Have a strong password, and a strong password is actually a phrase. So have a phrase with spaces in them. So things like say, I will never forget this password again. Then you can add numbers 9922 and exclamation mark or something to make it a strong password. That's actually a very strong password. Okay. Clear your browser cache or cache and cookies every week if you can. If you don't, depending on the kind of browser you're using, which some of them automatically clears, but almost every browser has the feature there. If you don't know how to do it, ChatGPT or Google it to be able to know how to clear the browser cache and cookies. Those two alone are very good.
Since you've mentioned cookies, for the laymen's out there
Yeah,
who
let me
have
explain.
interacted,
Yeah.
accept all cookies, what does it mean?
So cookies, when we go to a website, they said accept cookies. The cookies are basically data that it fetches about your browsing moment to be able to make you have a better experience.
Okay.
So if I'm looking for flights, I'm looking for accommodation and everything, the cookies will remember those details and say, okay, now that I know you're looking for flight from here to Dubai, I can give you better rates from different airlines and be able to give a better experience.
So it's not risky accepting.
It is risky to some extent.
Okay.
Because sometimes if you go to a website that collects some of those cookies, they can actually use that to log in on your moment. So your moment of browsing, we call it a session. Okay. So when I'm browsing right now, that is my session. Some hackers know how to inject and be able to fetch those cookies and duplicate that session somewhere and log you out. That's how accounts get hacked. That's how your social media accounts get hacked. That's how they collect some of those passwords. So there are days they don't need your password itself. They don't need your moment of browsing. So some apps which are created don't have a way to actually store the cookies properly, so hackers are able to fetch them and your passwords. So password length should be a sentence. You can add numbers and characters. Clear your browser cache and cookies quite often. You need to make sure that you have a two-step verification or multi-factor authentication, but not via, SMS.
Okay.
We have what they call the authenticator. It's there. Let's make sure we have it. On the email side as well, the last but not the least on the email, we have what we call a backup code. If you go to the settings, you'll find a backup code there. Download it, physically print it, and keep it under your pillow. Because the day you lose access to your phone or your email and records, that is what is going to get you to log in back. And on social media, the more pictures you have of yourself, the easier it is to recover, by the way. So you need to actually have more pictures
photos
of yourself.
Okay.
And make sure you have two-step verification for every social media. WhatsApp, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, Twitter, everything, they all have it.
Another layman's, out of curiosity, is the view once feature, perhaps on WhatsApp, really private?
I can't say yes or no, because I've seen some scenarios where it's been stored on the phone.
Yeah.
So somebody can go to the history of that and be able to view. So to some extent, yes.
Okay, do with that information as you may. So, Dr. Mugambi, looking ahead, what's the greatest risk to data privacy in Kenya over the next 5 years? And if you had a chance to have a single amendment to the policy and the laws in place, the Data Protection Act, what would it be, and how would it address that risk?
I think one of the risks is our ignorance. Because, I mean, even as we are talking about this, we usually say, accept cookies. Do you accept terms and conditions? Yes.
We never read them.
I mean, surely. I mean, you are registering into something and you're being told, I mean, you're in a hurry, then, then if you download that terms and conditions of the privacy policy, you need like an hour or two to read. So one of the things is the ignorance and not knowing about what Dr. Bright is saying. What are some of, because it's not if you will be hacked, it's when. It's not a probability. It will happen.
Yeah.
So attempts will be made. So I think it's the issue of educating ourselves, and mostly also educating, especially when you look at the village. People who I talk about my village because that has happened to people at home, where you find that people trust a lot. They are being called by someone and saying, "Mimi ni kutoka banki fulani, so uko na account hapa," and you see. My uncle, my relative in the village, like, oh, the bank is calling me.
Yeah.
Then they ask, oh, so what is your phone number? What's your PIN? What is the last transaction? And sometimes they are so trusting, and they actually provide that information. So it calls for a lot of education, and this education, like what you're doing now at KTN, is very important.
Yeah.
And also leveraging on community media, for example, having this conversation in Kiluya, in Turkana, in Kiembu, in language that people can appreciate, and giving very clear examples about what we are talking about. How do you simplify your protection? Why is it important, for example, for you to have a password for your accounts? Why is it important to change your passwords, to have different passwords? And this is information that needs to be relayed all over this place. So I think ignorance is one of the challenges that even myself or you and I have, because technologies emerge from day to day. But the good thing, you find that the institutions that are trying, for example, you'll find that banks, for example, will remind you not to share a password.
Yes.
They'll remind you to change your password from day to day. Telcos will remind you that, please, hey, remember, don't share your mobile money password or your PIN. Then you find that, for example, platforms like eCitizen, these days they try that if you don't log in for a longer time, you'll find that the password that you use, you can't reuse it. You have to start afresh. I think those simple strategy will help.
Yes.
And also children. So there is, for example, the Communication Authority has a program where they educate children on safety online, which is very critical, and it's being done by children's organizations, UNDP, because children have to learn what information, because sometimes they may have interaction with somebody online, and they're just being told, so where do you live? Yeah, I live here. Where do you go to school? Yes, especially gaming and that kind of thing. So that's another strategy. So when you talk about how can we improve our law, I think one of the ways, for example, is having stiffer penalties. Because when you look at the penalties that are there, to some organization it's pocket change. Because if you find some organization, you find them 5 million, they can pay you by mobile money. They're like, okay, let's pay this. So I think it's that. Then secondly, I think will be empowering the investigatory and the oversight units. Like, for example, the DCI, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, the anti-banking fraud units, the CBK when they're dealing with digital lenders. So regulators that are there need to be empowered and provided the resources, and also be devolved. So you'll find that the Office of the Data Protection Commission has established offices. I think there are like 7 offices out of Nairobi. So you'll find a lot of people say that this is a Nairobi conversation. It is, people see it as a very elite conversation. But then when you get that in, because the people are being defrauded all over the country, and they don't get to have this conversation. That's why I say another policy change that needs to be there is how do you deal with data brokers? Because in my view, there needs to be very specific provisions, because these people who just go and scrape data, buy data and sell data, there needs to be stronger regulations. There needs to be laws about how to carry out surveillance, especially by state agents.
Yeah.
These days, of course, the law says that you need to carry out, for example, you need to get a court order, a warrant, so that you can carry out your investigation. I think that position needs to be a bit refined, so that it's also very clear where can they get data from and for what reason. And then I think the law needs to be very clear on transparency. If, for example, if you're a private institution and the government seeks for data, there needs to be a transparent way to report that we have received requests for your data from XYZ. Because sometimes people go and ask for your data. Then I could go to Bright's place of work, I ask for his data and I'm given and he's not informed.
Yeah.
So there needs to be that those kind of measures that makes it a bit harder, that make the process more transparent, that make the process more accountable. I think currently we have an AI, artificial intelligence strategy in Kenya. There's a work on a policy, but we also need to provide a mechanism that is very clear, that doesn't stifle innovation, but also provides for very clear guidelines to pay attention to the principles that we are discussing.
You know, there's something which I think organizations need to do, carry out. There's something we call a back bounty program. Back bounty program basically means that you legally invite, in a private program or public program, where if it's a private, you say, apply, I will get you in, and if you find any bug in the scope of system that I have, you can report it and we'll pay you for it, legally. So only Safaricom, I think, in Kenya, who has a back bounty program. So they actually invite hackers to actually breach certain systems that they have, to be able to assist them to be, because they can't hire, or you can't have all the security personnel in-house. Yeah. So I encourage a lot of organizations to actually look into such programs, being able to be open to also listen. There are very young boys who are in high school and university who find bugs in systems, and when they want to report to organizations, what do they see? They're like, no, we don't want to listen to you because we feel like, you know, it's also intimidation, you know, or there's an ego problem, which I have seen in a lot of organizations. So you report to them saying, we have been able to breach a system, we found a bug, which we believe, if we actually go through it, we might be able to get a lot more data. And those are things that people discover. Organizations have to be open to that and constantly do security assessments and engage experts to be able to actually carry that out.
And avoid the free apps and the free systems.
Something, you mentioned free. I recall the free Wi-Fi. How dangerous is it, number one? And then number two, as you answer that, Bright,
yes,
talk to us about this disappearing messages. Do they truly disappear? Once you delete a message, is it truly gone? Is there any footprint on whatever you sent?
But I have a question. If they are free lunch, before Bright answer, the question is it really a free lunch?
Is it?
So when you talk about free Wi-Fi, is it really free?
Every time you have anything stored on your phone, there's a memory to it. So you can't really delete anything on your phone. So the moment you say delete a picture, delete a file and everything, it's never deleted. I say they're still there. There are tools that are being developed to be able to recover and fetch those information out. So your deleted data is never deleted. Anything that is on a free Wi-Fi, if I'm on the same Wi-Fi as you, I can see the websites they're going to, and I can redirect you to the fake one. So I might not be able to see the password, yes, but I may be able to see maybe even your sessions. Remember what we talked about, the sessions and the cookies, and I can now log in as you. So free Wi-Fi, you have to be very careful when you're doing it, especially very sensitive, how do you call it, work. I say hotspot your phone and be able to actually do that work. Or get a trusted VPN, any VPN that can work, and use that VPN to be able to at least do sensitive data like the banking. But most importantly, if you're going to do banking and the likes, I actually use a separate browser just for banking. So you have one browser for everyday social media, everyday searches, have a separate browser for banking, have a separate browser for maybe your work, so that you de-risk you actually being compromised.
I think, and also just to add, there's also one thing, and I think Bright had mentioned, but I think it's important to provide. So the Data Protection Act provides for certain principles. And one of those principles is data minimization.
Yes.
Because what data is enough? Because, for example, do you require, so you ask yourself, for example, if you're doing a banking transaction, does somebody need to have your email, your name, where you live, your phone number? So the question is, what data is sufficient to carry out a specific transaction? Because if you collect more data than you require, then it becomes a bit more dangerous, because if there's a hack, people have more data about it. So I think we need to think more, because the Data Protection Act already provides for data minimization. So then one of the security features is to ensure that, for example, whether it's a regulator like CBK, Communication Authority, or the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, to keep insisting or to provide very clear guidelines on what data is sufficient, because breaches will occur. And if breaches will occur, what minimal data, because if you have, for example, mask data, or if it is in code or transaction codes, then if you just get a transaction code between you and I, even if you hack it, there's really no much.
Yes.
But if my name is there, your name is there, our location, then that becomes a potential interest. Then secondly, as I said, is that we need to refine the issue of surveillance, how we carry out surveillance and investigations to for example, whether it's the Police Act, whether it's the Criminal Procedure Code, the processes in code. So as to be very clear, if there's somebody becomes a person of interest, where can you source that information from? And for example, if an investigation has been carried out and there's no warrant, there's no court order, then the court should not agree to continue with that process. And there should be some repercussions. Like, for example, remember Ojwang, where he was traced, he was killed. The people involved in that process, because personal data was involved, people within all that transaction where the data was handled, where he was tracked, there needs to be consequences for those individuals.
Okay, speaking of the late Ojwang, what exactly is location triangulation, and how is it applied in everyday life? How does it work in as simple terms as possible, briefly?
So being able to triangulate, or triangulation, there's location, there's being able to pinpoint where you are, and then you being able to actually triangulate to the phone. So cell tower and the GPS are two different things, right? With a GPS triangulation, or with a GPS location tracking, if I send a software to you, it's a very simple open source software, and you click on it and you click allow, it will open the details of what I want you to see, like a folder. It will give me a very accurate within 10 meters of where you are, because they collect such information as to where it is. But when it comes to the phone or the cell tower, it's basically, when I call you, it has to go to the nearest cell towers before it can go to you. So it's not very accurate to exactly. It knows that you're in the area. Maybe if they go to do triangulation, it knows that you're in the area of Mombasa Road or Westlands and everything, but the distance is quite big, right? So the easiest way is when it's GPS kind of location tracking, and location tracking of that is usually software based, that I have to send a link to you, and when you click on it, if I haven't solved the laptop here, I would have done it for you. If you click on that link, it tells me which part of this building we are in, right? Because of the GPS that you have on your phone.
Okay.
And to add into that, with that information, if somebody can get information, for example, if you pay for certain utilities, you pay for water, for electricity, somebody has your GPS, somebody has triangulated, then if it can even be accurate, because we can get which floor you live in, which estate, because the utilities you pay for, if somebody has gotten data from, whether it's through a data dump or whatever, they can actually know exactly which house number you are, which gate you are. So it's a collection of all these data points. So where you become a person of interest, for example, you'll find, like Bright said, there are legal processes and correct processes to carry out investigations and to extract data. But sometimes people just go rogue and use the wrong avenues. So that where you find, when you become a person of interest, whether it's an individual doing it or whether it's state agents doing it, then it becomes very easy to get you. People can know where you go to school, for example, if you're in school. As I say, people can know which place of worship you go to. So we can even turn. So there's something I read recently, and there's this photographer, for 8 years, he took photos at the same location, at the same time. And what he discovered, for those 8 years, people have the same habits. So if somebody has a bag going to work, this kind of bag, with a mug of tea or whatever, same. So somebody can actually take a while, get to know your habits, get to know what is your routine. And with all this data, somebody has a complete profile about you. And as Bright said, these days you don't even need, it's just an AI tool that will provide a report. And we will know that you're actually in your bedroom 2 in your house on the 7th floor of where you live.
Okay, time flies when you have fun. And unfortunately, we're nearing the end of this particular conversation. But luckily, we've been able to demystify what data privacy, what data protection is, what the law, the act encompasses when it comes to data data protection, and equally the legal recourses one can seek when it comes to instances of data breach. But as we finalize, gentlemen, we've talked about the legal consequences that exist, but I'd like your take on how collaboration between regulators, industries, and citizens can build a stronger privacy culture as we finalize, as you give us your final comments as well.
Yeah, I mean, we 5 years ago, where Kenya was is not where we are right now. So there's a lot of work that has been done, and I'm actually happy because we are better off than many other countries. But there has to be a very good collaboration between the public sector and the private sector to listen to each other and be able to share ideas. We see some conferences that happen, and then you basically it's just for the public sector or people who can afford to even go there. So we need to make it easy. We need to engage university students. Let me tell you something. The amount of details that university students have in terms of cybersecurity knowledge or about privacy and everything is a lot. But they're never being heard. They're never being developed. They're never being utilized to be able to make our internet space safer. So we need to engage them. We need to let the private sector also be able to share some of this information. There has to be the work between the state agencies and the likes to know what new thing are we learning. We do research. I personally, my team and I, we do a lot of research, but you see the research is staying with us, and we teach a few of those to a few people. We have workshops that we carry out. But we know we don't need a big conference to be able to do that. So we need to actually get engaged and be able to have a common conversation somewhere that will make all of us to be safe.
Okay, and remember, ignorance is no defense.
R&D, we don't do R&D. A lot of R&D.
So you'll find like see, I'm the chairperson of Data Privacy and Governance Society of Kenya. And one of the things that we do as a society, like what Dr. Bright has done, we are establishing university chapters to help students appreciate and start getting the knowledge and skills about data governance, data protection, and cybersecurity. Because these are the professionals of the future. And some of them actually have more knowledge than the practitioners because they do things as a hobby. They do it for fun. Then secondly is engaging the regulator. Like for us as the Data Privacy and Governance Society, we are constantly engaging the Office of the Data Protection Commission and saying, for example, what are the challenges, the practitioners? Because you see, data protection is an ecosystem. There is the regulator, there are the professionals, and there's the industry. And all these have to have a conversation with one another. And you'll find because of these conversations is why the Data Commissioner has provided guidelines in the communication sector, in the education sector, in the health sector. Then you have sectors like the Digital Financial Services Association that actually have created their own guidelines. So it's really a concerted effort. And also for the media, as I said, and I usually emphasize, I'm very passionate on this, we need to use community media to educate people out there to understand what does it mean if somebody calls you and start asking for your banking information, for your mobile money PIN, for your ID. So these are conversations that we need to have from day to day.
Okay, and thank you for taking part in this civic education session. I'm pretty sure we've been able to demystify some of these jargons around data privacy and protection, and how protection starts with you back at home. So it could be as easy as changing your password to a strong password. Remember what Bright Gameli said? You could put a whole statement right there, put spaces, put numbers, just make it as more complicated as possible. Embrace the two-step verification processes and all that. And I'm hoping this is a conversation we can have time and time again, maybe preferably in vernacular languages, as Mugambi mentioned. So we have a vernacular studio right here. We might be welcoming you guys. Thank you so much for your indulgence and your input on this very timely discussion. Dr. Bright Gameli needs no introduction. He is a cybersecurity expert and the CEO of CyberGuard Africa and the founder of Africa Hacken. And we equally appreciate the presence and the input of Dr. Laibuta Mugambi, who's a distinguished legal professional and the chairperson of the Data Privacy and Governance Society of Kenya. What we'll do next time, we'll make sure Bright has his laptop when we're inviting
I'll be more
him.
than glad.
Okay, amazing. Well, we take a short break on that note right here on KTN Prime. Up next, the latest in the world of business with Kelvin Nyakundi. Keep it right here.